childhood up, we have had to conform to a certain social game. And so we're in a constant state of competition. Good assistance, secret. You can't make a mistake.
Welcome, everyone, to Friends of Failure, where we discuss the reality and necessity of failure. I'm your host, Sam, and this is my co-host, Megan.
Hello.
And I would like to introduce our very first guest. This is Amy. Amy, welcome.
Thank you.
How you doing today?
Really good. Had a really good morning, very productive, and I'm excited to be here. So ready to get this started.
Here we go. So this is our third episode, and we're finally entering the realm of what this podcast is supposed to be, and that's having friends on the show. So thank you for being our first guest.
It's our first time, so be gentle.
Yeah.
I've been a guest of many, so not
yeah.
a podcast, though.
I would like to obviously you have an idea that the topic today is going to be failure, but I'm sure you have some thoughts on that, right?
Of course, yeah. Just
and we come from a failure podcast.
Yes,
originally.
that's true.
Probably should disclose that.
Yeah, definitely was partnered with Megan a few years ago when we were younger and drunker.
I
was drunker. Starting a podcast of failure. RIP Fragile Freaks, but
it's still out there somewhere.
No, it is. I listened to it recently. I know. But just having done that podcast, seeing the good and the bad of it, and then being asked to come in and do this post project of I kind of feel like that might have stemmed some sort of.
It was the beginning,
because we called it a passion project at the time, and I think we lost fruit of actually making it a passion, and it was more of a project. And seeing Megan and find somebody who's just as passionate about creating this podcast and creating this platform and opening up the dialogue of failure and really committing to that, I think is exactly what we should have done had I been more of a participant in it, which I by no means is saying I was the reason why the podcast failed.
I was gonna say it's totally your fault.
But I think that you have to have a partner that when the tough gets going, you kind of have to shift the weight around of the stress. And for me, it was always just easier to say man, we're taking this too seriously. Is it really that big of a deal? And I think if you want something to be truly successful, you have to treat it with the respect that it deserves.
Very well said. That made me think about hobbies are fun, and it's something that's supposed to be productive for yourself as an individual. Yeah. But going to the gym, I'm very passionate about that. I very much enjoy it, but it's work.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And there are days where I'm really frustrated with myself or the task at hand. Right. No, but that was very well said. I like that.
Thank you.
So it sounds like you guys aren't having a comeback tour, but maybe we'll see.
She could be a reoccurring guest at some point.
I think with all the balls that I'm juggling,
she's gonna be a little busy
as of right with my current life, compared to where 22-year-old Amy was versus what 26-year-old Amy is doing now.
It's a little different.
It's a little different, and my passions have definitely gone a different direction from what she is. But I am more than happy to be a reoccurring guest on y'all's podcast if I am welcome to be so.
Probably not. We'll see how this goes.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Probably a little presumptuous at this point.
Yeah. You're assuming quite a bit.
You're going to be the odd number, so our third guest, our fifth, and so forth. So just be ready to be pulled into this. Yeah.
Cool.
She's
okay. Denton is 6 hours away, so
yeah, a lot of driving. It'll be fine. So awesome. So we like to talk about failure as something that teaches us, right? It's something that is normal. It's a reoccurring thing in everyone's lives. And if it isn't, then you're probably just stagnant and moving nowhere, right? The only way we grow is through failure. So I'm curious as to what your experience with failure is, or your perspective of failure in your own life.
Oh, well, failure is a daily thing for me. Mostly because, I mean, I currently work with students between the ages of 6 and 13. And I'm, just dealing with their failures every day, letting them, it's okay. And then also I feel like a lot of like teachers or guidance counselors or just program leaders in general, that's what I do.
People that work with kids.
That work with kids, they have a hard time admitting that they've done something wrong or they've messed up with how they were leading, the group of children. And sometimes it's okay to just like sit all these kids down and say like, hey, what just happened, that had nothing to do with you guys, that had everything to do with like I didn't handle it correctly,
which I'm pretty sure you did this past week.
I did, because they were driving me bananas and I might have blown up a little bit. And we had to go back and I was like, listen, you guys, maybe Miss Amy needs to gain more control of her annoyance with y'all whenever you get too excited about things. But here's what we can do to kind of help each other not have to experience that again. I will gain more control of my emotions if you guys can do me a favor. And when you start getting really excited, kind of just be like, Miss Amy, I need to go outside, or I need to go to the gym, or I need to just like exert some energy. And then we do like an avocado dance, and then everybody's happy again.
What's an avocado dance?
Don't ask.
Oh gosh.
It's a tool of necessity. Okay.
It involves flossing.
Oh, there it is.
Oh yeah. You are hip and cool with the youths.
I am with the youths. But that being said, like, so working with them, it definitely involves daily failures, both on their part and mine, just because they're children. That's just part of the growing up process. And then for me, kind of being new to this new like line of work, I'm still just kind of like stretching it out and like seeing how I fit into this role. And that's going to come with not always doing the right thing or failing at a certain task, or even teaching them the wrong thing and having to go back and be humble and say, hey, let's relearn this because I didn't fully understand it. And I expected you at 8 years old to completely understand it. It doesn't make any sense. So, but luckily it did lead me to kind of like pick and choose my next personal goal of like.
Yeah, it guided you in the right direction to something we'll probably talk about.
Next chapter
at some point.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool too, because you obviously had to learn the communication aspect from something else, right? Yes. I mean, if you're going to interact with a lot of people, whether it's relationships or friendships or yourself, communication is key. So I think that's kind of cool to hear about that. Especially, it's got to be weird with kids, because just talking to adults is kind of difficult.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, talk about failure, trying to communicate with people.
Adults are almost worse at it because they're stuck in their ways. They're not as honest as a child.
Yeah. And most children are just like, they're willing to agree with you. One, because they don't understand that you are actually apologizing to them for your actions. And they're just quick to forgive. They're like, oh no, that makes sense. I mean, you're the adult, you know exactly what just happened. And I'm learning.
Authority thing.
Yeah, it's the authority thing. So you almost have to like kind of navigate those kind of humbling moments correctly too. Like you can't really mess that up, because that conversation is actually more important than what just happened that caused that conversation to start. And you don't want to take advantage of like a child's mindset. Be like, oh, well, he got over it. Like, it's not a big deal. Everybody's fine. Because, in the back of his mind, that's now how he feels it's okay to like, just, oh, I said, I'm sorry. And then I moved on. Like, it's not enough. Like, you have to be the change you want to see. And you have to teach the child that as well. Like, hey, from now on, like the way I blew up, that wasn't okay. And going forward, I would love it if you held me accountable when you saw me getting frustrated in front of you guys. And say, Miss Amy, it looks like you're getting kind of heated, and I don't like that version of you.
You're kind of yelling a lot.
It's really hard. And like, nobody's perfect. Like, these kids aren't always going to call you out, and you're not always going to catch yourself. But like, always kind of going back, reflecting on the day. I have this like one part of the day where I call, all right, let's talk about our feelings. And, we go over something that negative that happened that day. And I go, how did you feel about it? How do you feel now? And then what can we do to be better next time?
So it's kind of teaching them a little bit about failure in a way, but with their emotions.
I'm trying to teach them more like emotional intelligence, because that's such a thing that like could get neglected at that time in their life. But more so, I'm trying to remind myself too, like, it's real easy for me to fall out of like just being numb and letting bad things happen or letting failure happen, and not asking myself the same questions, like, how did I feel about the situation? How do I feel now? And what can I do to be better for it to not happen again?
It's hard to do even as an adult. Like I would say when we were recording our last podcast, we did not know how to do that.
Yeah, definitely didn't know how to. We just kind of like dropped the podcast and said, well, that's it. Amy did the editing. Megan posted it. It's done.
Well, I meant our emotions as like young 20 something.
Well, I think,
but yeah, sure.
Definitely. I was definitely in a phase of my life where I was drinking my emotions. So that's not good either.
I feel you though, because I definitely would say at some point in my 20s, I had to identify lack of emotional intelligence. I mean, I had a couple of switches that I could flip, and like I could have extreme versions of those emotions, but it's interesting to me. I know people that have teached and gotten viewpoints from that, and I've been fortunate to hear great stories of how they try to do it a little bit different so that they're taking care of the kids. But I mean, we all remember being in school and having teachers that we remembered because they were awful people and did horrible job. I mean, it's the reality, right? And then I remember the teachers that, I mean, they were incredible, and it's wild to me because it's a profession I could never do, and I'm very grateful for teachers, because someone has to do that. But those are really important things that, teachers, they are very passionate and they want to go help children, and then they get told, hey, nobody cares about that other stuff. We need to get good test scores. You know what I mean? And for all the sacrifices that, that whole profession asks for, it's crazy.
I kind of want to touch on something that you just said, where like somebody has to do that. And, just like I had like this flash moment of like, I didn't have to do that. I had like a really good job before I got into this one. I actually get paid less, but here's the difference is I was so successful in my field, like as a retail manager, like, and running that business, making sure everything was done, all my stuff was on time, my numbers were right, like I was getting recognition left and right. But I was miserable
because that was customer service.
And that was customer service, Amy. Like it felt like I was living a double life. Yeah, like a lie. It was, and I was talking to my husband, was my fiance at the time, and he was just like, "Man, I wish you would quit." And I was like, "But I'm really good at it, and I make great money from it. Is that enough reason to quit?" And he was like, "You're miserable." He was like, "It makes me miserable." Like he was like, you should quit. And so we talked about it, and I quit. Like I quit my very nice high paying management position.
Something that would be considered successful. Like you were moving up the ladder, you were doing everything you're supposed to do.
And I took a gamble with becoming a substitute teacher and kind of swimming in those waters to see if I swam or sunk. And I ultimately started swimming. And granted, I am making a fraction of what I'm used to making, but my like personal like feelings about myself, about my job, about the work I'm doing, I mean, that's almost priceless to me. It's almost worth like it's making up for the money that I don't make anymore. And like, yes, I live a much more modest lifestyle these days, but I don't feel like I am. Like I feel more fulfilled. I feel like I don't need to buy like 2 big bottles of wine for like just one weekend. I don't feel like I need a
Trader Joe's 6-pack.
Yeah, I don't feel like I need to go out and try to find fulfillment in other ways and spending my money on that. Now I'm spending my time on things that make me feel fulfilled. And
your priorities.
So sometimes even being successful means you might be failing in another area of your life.
Yeah.
For sure. So there was a gentleman at a gym I worked at. He was a member, right? So I was a personal trainer. I talked to everybody at the gym, and I got to know him a little bit. and, you know, just based on some of the things he would talk about, I realized he was making a lot of money. And I was like, wow, I'm just curious. So like, I'm going to ask questions. And he was like, yeah, I'm in financing. And he's like, but dude, he's like, I hate my life. And I mean, he just opened that door. He was like, I hate my life. He's like, I make over 250,000 a year, I guess, in the financing world. And I was just talking to him about what goes through my head in terms of money is important. You do have to have a way to live, right? But
after a certain level,
you're not wrong. I mean, I had a couple of jobs that some people have no problem with it. I hated it, and I had to stop because it ends up radiating into. But I you know, at first it's a failure, which is I did it over and over again, and then one day you go, wait a minute, and then you learn from whatever that is, right?
Yeah.
But I'm really happy for you, because there are a lot of people who aren't in a situation. They aren't in a situation where they can just stop what they're doing, right? There's too many people that rely on them, or they have so much weight on their shoulders that the amount of courage that they would need to be able to take that kind of leap.
And some people have all the opportunity and still won't do it.
I think there's lots of variables that are at play when it comes to trying to help yourself feel more fulfilled. And you're right, some people don't have the means to just stop working for 2 months while they try to figure out what their life mission is. And some people have dependents that would also say the same, like, hey, I want you to live your dream, but like, we also have to put food on the table. I do feel a little bit privileged and blessed because my husband was willing to say, like, hey, baby, we are good. Like, you need to figure out a way that you're going to feel fulfilled and make yourself happy. And not everybody has that. Some people have to spend years trying to prepare themselves for that, and will put themselves into debt trying to just feel that thing of happiness. So I think, sometimes you have to just, like, how like some people have to live paycheck to paycheck. Sometimes you have to live yourself like day to day and try to find those things in the day that make you feel fulfilled, and rely on those moments as opposed to like the 8 hours that you have to spend.
Is that how you survived customer service?
That's exactly how I survived customer service.
Lunch was really good today.
I mean, I actually did do that. I actually would get really excited about like trying a new Asian pear with a new nut butter pairing. And I was like, all right, I'm a little foodie today. Boom. And all in all, I was dying inside because the actual job was terrible.
Oh man, the reality of this world. Dark,
I mean, don't get me wrong. Well, the world is literally designed for you to fail a little bit. It's beneficial to other people when you are unhappy, and that's the sad truth.
You go buy things.
Yeah, because
you go into a whole thing on consumerism.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother episode. But I mean, really, you have to really fight to want to be happy in the world that we live in.
Well, and you also won't always be happy when you get to your dream. Like, I think both of you are now in fields that you really love, but not every day is like, a walk in the park, I'm sure. Yeah. And that's the misconception that a lot of people have, is that, oh, if I'm successful and I'm doing what I want to do, I'm always going to be happy all the time.
Exactly.
Oh, it's absurdity, because for a really long time, I just kept telling myself, make a little bit more money, make a little bit more money.
Yeah.
Right. And then one day I didn't make a little bit more money. I didn't make like a giant sum of money or anything, but I had the realization of, so I'm just going to stop what I was saying. I guess it was Jim Carrey said something about, he said, I wish everyone could make all the money in the world and live whatever life they wanted to, so they'd realize that the money and the cars and all that stuff isn't the answer. Yeah. And what he's talking about, and he does talk about this like in interviews or whatever, about he's like, you have to meditate, you need to be in nature, you have to have these conversations with yourself, you know what I mean, you have to fail. And I thought that was interesting, because he was just like, hey, it's just, that's not the answer, right? It's
there has to be growth. It's not just, hey, I have money now, so I'm successful. You have to internally look within yourself and be like, this is what I'm going to do on this planet.
Yeah. Well, and Amy touched on that, right? You could be succeeding in one and you're like, I did it, I got $1 million a year job, but then like your whole family life is completely destroyed, and you're destroyed on the inside.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about where the job where we met, it was terrible, and Amy lived with me while I was working that.
Yeah.
How would you describe
well, it's hard because she was literally a walking zombie in the house because she was working such long hours overnight. It was difficult not being her friend, but like
that was also difficult.
No, it was a difficult situation because Jeff cared about you so much. Like, Jeff loves you so much, and I love you so much, and we see you like bending over backwards and like really breaking your back over like a position that it was just a really rough situation.
It felt like I was successful because it's the most money I ever made,
right?
And that's where they get you on that kind of job.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, like you felt in your position in retail, it's miserable. Like it was not. I did enjoy. I did learn. I like managing people. I do like working with people, but never in that environment. Like I didn't like that type of management.
Yeah.
Also, what was weird about that is you were always going to the next meeting. So you're supposed to be managing these people, but they're like, no, but now, and then, it was a disaster.
Well, and it wasn't, and she wasn't even like, it's like her being miserable at work started making her miserable at home because she just wasn't an active participant in the house. And like Jeff, Megan, and I were really close. We called ourselves like family. And like there would be days that like Jeff and I would have dinner together every day, and it just sucked because Megan wasn't there. And we really, but I mean, granted that like grew Jeff and I's friendship, and now we love to cook together. We're going to do that later today when we get done with this podcast. I'm like really stoked about it, but at the same time, like it almost felt like a piece of you or a piece of the family puzzle was missing because if Megan was home, she was asleep, or if Megan was home, like, and I love you, but she was kind of bitchy, like
not wrong.
She was so miserable, and
I was just drained. So I was trying to like fulfill this thing of you graduate college, you go get the big job, and you push as hard as you can so you can move up or do whatever. And I forgot the whole, you need to balance the rest of your life.
Yeah, it was a really toxic situation, and the only way we could counterbalance that was just to give her space when all we wanted to do was kind of invade it and be with her because she was gone so often. We didn't get to.
But my thing is, I would do it again because it made me who I am. And it was a big experience and failure in a way because I couldn't.
Well, and you built relationships out of that miserable job. And like, my miserable retail job led me to meet you, and then later moved to Dallas and get to know everybody that I got to know here. I mean, there's always some good in the midst of the bad. It's just, does it outweigh the situation? Like, like, yes, it's great that you met Sam and you guys got to grow this friendship.
But was it worth it?
But at what cost?
I feel like it was worth it, like relationship wise and professionally. Like it got me in the door to another job anyways.
Yeah,
which absolutely. I think is your experience got you into the door to where you want to be now.
Right.
That's awesome. So failure in relationships is always interesting because
absolutely.
Even though it's really easy to talk about breakups and significant others, I mean, even with friendships, right? I mean, I don't have any quarrels with any of my friends that I don't really know anymore, right? They become people that they were a part of your life, and then you guys move on. It happens, right? And it's so strange because you have to ask the question of, why did I not try hard enough, or why did they not try hard enough, right? Because I have friends that live in other states and I talk to them. Like I call them on the phone or, I guess we could Zoom, but I mean, I don't have to see their face.
Yeah.
I use the flip phone. Hey, man. But it's interesting because, it happens with family too, right? Relationships is such a broad thing. And Yeah, I guess I was just segueing into relationships because we were talking about friends.
Well, and it's interesting how we all know each other.
It is. That's interesting. I mean, like, and if it's okay with you, I'm like totally open to disclose that we at one point had dated and it didn't work out. But I think that almost is for the best, because I think I think we dated about a month or two. And in that time, I think in that time, I think we are definitely better friends than we ever were as a couple necessarily. And then that also plays into like where I was personally during that time. Like, I don't think
you weren't ready.
I wasn't emotionally available necessarily. Mm-hmm. Like, I wasn't able to give you the emotional availability that I think you probably deserved. But
I think you and I like felt each other out, and like, you're right. I mean, it was a two-way thing, right? I think both of us were in a place of our lives, right?
But you guys were basically each other's good luck chucks, because now you're with your lifelong partners.
Yeah.
Like, you found the best person for you.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I think I told my husband this, because when I said that this is what I was going to go do this weekend, because he works offshore, and kind of let him know like here and there where I'm at, like where I'm going to be.
You talk to your husband about what you're doing?
Isn't that weird?
But I should probably tell mine.
But I told him, and he was like, "Who's Sam?" I was like, "Sam, I've told you about Sam." And he was like, "Is that the guy you dated?" And I was like, "Yeah, that before you, it was Sam." After, what do we call him again? The ex
Voldemort.
After my brief little phase with the other one, and then I met Jake. I was like, no, it really worked out, because I think if I had got anything out of the relationship that we had at the time, it was that like communication was such a strong pillar. Like, I heard from you like every day. And that wasn't something at the time that I was really accustomed to. It wasn't something that was an investment in my previous relationships.
The last one.
Right. And it kind of like taught me to kind of look for that like in another person. And I happen to have found that in my now husband. And it's really all for the better, I believe. And
you learn from it.
Yeah. And I also think it's great that it's, there's no ill will or any kind of grievance towards each other, because I see you on Instagram mostly. That's like where I see you most active, and I like see your life. I'm like, all right, that's awesome. I'm really happy for him. This is good going. Everybody's going good.
So two things. First, this will be the third episode and third time I go, back in 2008 on Facebook. But anyway, so I really should go and look and see if there's anything from 2008.
We started to that one time, but we didn't finish it.
This is true. This is true. So I would say that communication is 110% what holds a relationship together, right? Any form of relationship. And so what's interesting is we interact with so many strangers in a day, and we pick up things sometimes, but the friends that we keep is kind of how the person you are, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting with how, I mean, even dynamics in a family, like say blood relatives, right, will change based on how you change in the way you communicate. So like you and I interacted with each other, and then we pinged off of each other and went whatever direction we went, but we both learned something from the other.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
And that's what happened with all past relationships that lead you to like,
it definitely it starts piling up.
I have figured out who I am or who I want to be in a relationship
based off like that interaction with that person.
Yeah. Because I've heard people say, obviously there's the whole soulmate thing, but then there's the other side where it's
definitely
a choice.
A soulmate, Sam. Yeah. People definitely have soulmates.
You don't always marry them. Oh, that's mean. I love you, Jeffrey.
But there's also, it's a choice, right? Where people will talk about if two people decide, hey, we're going to put in the work and do this, but there is a flow. I mean, puzzle pieces fit together,
Yeah. My husband and I actually have this thing that we say to each other, like it's like once a week we check in. He's like, are you so glad you married me? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, I'm so glad I married you. And we even have like, while we were dating, we were like, I want to do this, as long as you want to do this. And as soon as somebody didn't want to do it, we were like, okay, like that's no ill will. Like you're good to go. Like I want this because I want it with you. And if you want it because you want it with me, then that's what it is. Like we both agreed love was not just enough. Like the work had to be put in to actively say like, hey, this seems really hard right now. Let's talk about it.
See, what we do is we threaten divorce. That is a running joke, but like,
yeah.
You smash something.
We're still in the honeymoon phase, so the divorce, the D word is not in our household.
It's there's no value added. That is literally a joke. They're not threatening that.
Well, the trick is the weird flex is you threaten divorce to people that you're not married to, you know.
True. That is a good one, and I think I'll start using that with this one right here.
I'll do that on TikTok. That'll be my new thing. I'm just gonna divorce like.
Are you on
people,
TikTok,
strangers. I have
dipping
one
his toes in the.
I have
in the
one
TikTok.
toe in the TikTok world, and
I gave this one a real talking to for being on TikTok. I was like my 11-year-olds at the camp.
You sound like an old fogey.
Here's the thing. So I had never done it, but Megan was like, "Hey, if we're going to expose ourselves to the it's crazy because there are billions of people on TikTok." I posted a quick little video and it turned into 200 people had seen it, maybe 300. Yeah, but
I didn't check y'all's views, but I did see the video, so I was one of those.
Thank you.
Did you like it?
I appreciate that.
Ooh.
Yeah, there it is.
Okay, that's asking.
I'll be right back.
My phone's on the floor.
And yeah, so I lost track of our conversation.
Relationships. Like building on top.
What about
whenever
relationships? Am I right?
Yeah, Bazinga.
And then it's just Seinfeld style jokes for the rest of it.
No, I agree with what you're saying. Like you just take a little bit of something from each relationship until you have built and put the work towards the relationship.
Well, you figure out what you actually want.
Yeah.
And there's good and bads. There's like, oh, I definitely don't want to do that again. Or there's like you were saying, I learned, oh, this communication thing is like,
I was like,
pretty
oh
cool.
no, I didn't know that.
Someone can actually talk to me and tell me what's going on. Yeah.
But it was a really, I think that was a really positive experience, even if it didn't like end up the way that most positive experience end up. Like it's still, this is currently a positive experience for me, despite the previous relationship part, if that makes sense.
Right.
I don't know. I feel like I'm wording it weird.
You guys basically hate each other, but you're forcing your way through this podcast.
Wow. Well, and the thing is normally, unless you know, people, you never hear people go, oh yeah, I dated so-and-so in high school, and then like I hate that person now because like it didn't work out. It's like I look back at almost any relationship I've ever had, and it's like I wasn't ready. And so I was like learning, right? So, you know, you think about like in middle school, you had like a girlfriend or boyfriend, and I don't look back and like, can't believe like it should have worked out. And like, I don't know, it's just strange, right?
Yeah, it's definitely strange. I think failures in relationships is what leads to the success in the relationship that you want.
So,
or that you have and working towards.
And that kind of makes me think about family, where, say like as a kid there was relationships, whatever, and then as an adult maybe both parties then, you know, apply themselves the same way to whatever. And I think it's really interesting to think about, you know, I'm only in my 30s, and how crazy it seems to think back, you know, 20 years ago, right? Like 10-year-old me and what I thought about people and what relationships were, right? Like even friendships, you know. But I also wonder, you know, if I'm going to be a person that's getting new friends over time all the way until death, or like when do I have that line where
or
I'm
you
like,
stop?
I
No
start quoting
friends.
Drake, or
I'm not gonna lie, once I'm on my deathbed, I'm done meeting people.
You're on, it's over,
like,
right?
This is me time now. You're gonna have to come to me. Like, I'm not going out for y'all anymore. I'm tired.
Looking for those last friendships before I eat the dust.
Oh, that's good. That's really good.
I would say like it's weird to think back, because even 10 years ago, to think of how I viewed relationships is night and day. Like I had a completely different view. She keeps telling me to look forward because I keep looking at her.
You said specifically for us to look forward when we're talking.
I didn't know I'd be so distracted by your beautiful face. So
don't you do that.
I just used your word.
Don't you dare. Stop it.
So if somebody were to ask you, like say one of your kids were to ask you, you know, hey, Miss Amy, or whatever they call you, you know, where are some really important things in life that you should learn from your failures? And obviously relationships is one of them. And then success of, well, I don't know how we would call it in your story of like with work, right? Of knowing that, hey, it can turn into a failure based off whatever. What other categories or places in life would you say?
I think the biggest subject that we're on right now is like a lot of them are getting ready for middle school or high school even. And they're starting to kind of get into that, like, what do I want to do for the rest of my life? Like at 13 years old, they are already saying, I got to figure it out.
Which is terrifying.
It's terrifying.
Our society does
and
that.
I told them very recently that I was actually going back to school. I was going back to college. I'm starting from the ground. Like I have to get my associate's degree. So I mean, like I'm going as a fresh freshman, and, as they're having these conversations, I told them, I was like, a few years ago, this isn't the first time I've tried going back to college. This is actually my second go around of trying to figure this out and see if this is really what I want to do. And they're like, and you're okay with that? And I was like, oh, I was like, yeah, and you need to be. I was like, what you guys decide that you want to spend the rest of your lives doing today, you need to know it's okay if by the time you graduate high school or even in the middle of college, you decide it's not for me.
Yeah.
Like I don't spend all your time, money, like heartache on this one goal that no longer seems like a passion for you. Because as soon as you start turning it more into like a job or more into like an obstacle, that's exactly what it's going to be. And you have to kind of fall in love with what you want to do. And that was like the biggest lesson I learned with college the first time, was like it just started piling up with like trying to work, trying to afford my own apartment, trying to do school, trying to like build relationships. And I bit it. Like I completely like face planted on the pavement of failure.
Well, and the thing is that like teaching kids that life doesn't always flow like in a simple path, that sometimes it's not the right time. We talked about this a lot when we were kind of getting ready for this episode,
right?
Is things needed to happen at a certain time for you. And I think that applies to most people. You're sometimes not ready for school, not ready for a relationship, not ready to make a change in your life. And that is just a part of it that some people put a lot of pressure on. Like, I need to do this right when I graduate high school, or I want to get married by this specific age, which is ridiculous. But
they do ask like, well, would you have finished school if you knew you weren't doing good? And I said, the only thing I would have changed the first time I went to school is I wish I had ended on a better note. I wish I had ended strong as opposed to like just letting it fizzle out.
Yeah.
Like I never really got any of that like sincere closure. I didn't reach out to any of my favorite professors and tell them like, hey, here's where I'm at in my life right now. This is just too hard and I'm not coping well with the stress. Like I feel worse about myself every time I go to that school. And I didn't have the confidence to go up to them and say that. And I kind of just let it die down. And I actually had I got emails from them like, hey, where are you? Like, is everything okay? Are you coming back? Like, hey, we're about to file the paperwork to say that you abandoned school. And I remember receiving that one and I was like, oh, am I all the weight that was up here just sank down here. And I was like, this.
And you didn't know how to deal with it at that age.
Oh yeah,
so
I was young. I was like 19. And I was like, this is the lowest I'll ever be. And it wasn't. But
it got lower.
As it turns out, rock bottom goes pretty deep. But I do tell the kids now, they're like, well, why are you going back to school now? I'm like, because I know my motivation is different. I was like, because of you guys, you've inspired me to want to be my best self, to go and challenge myself and to risk failing again.
Because it's worth it.
It's worth it because it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like someone's asking me to do it. It feels like I want to do it.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I think that's the biggest thing when it comes to like y'all's life. I was like, whether you're in school, whether you're at home, I was like, you can only put in the effort that you want to. If you start doing things because you think people just want you to do it, like you're going to be resentful, you're going to be hateful, you're going to be bitter, and you're going to have a bad attitude, and it's all just going to stink. Because I say stink instead of suck because they're children. Like it's, you have a stinky attitude, but you're just gonna have a stinky attitude about life, and no one's gonna like you.
You can curse on here. You can say shitty attitude.
Well, I can't curse in front of the children. It's the problem.
Yeah, I wouldn't tell them.
I'm trying to talk as if I'm talking to the actual child, and I tell these children, like, if you get yourself into a position that you want it more than whatever it is that somebody else is trying to motivate you to do, you're going to love it. But if somebody wants it more than you, for you, that's the end. I think ultimately that's what killed our podcast, to be honest with you. It just started to feel like, it felt more like something we had to do as opposed to something we wanted to do.
And we really, I've told Sam this before, we really set ourselves up for it because it wasn't, what we're doing now is more of what I imagined initially, but I didn't know how to actualize it. What we did was straight up research papers every week. And there's episodes that we know of that we hate because they were topics we weren't passionate about.
And they are still out for the world to listen.
The ancient Rome and Greece one, it's a garbage fire.
Just gives you you can hear the disdain and angst and I don't want to be here in your voice.
But the other side of the coin is there were some topics that we covered that we loved. Like Charlie Chaplin was a great life story to talk about. Ken
Young, that was the same episode, by the way.
Yeah, that's just a good episode. We just really enjoyed those topics, those people, their stories, and that's where we got lost. We got lost in the sauce. We got lost in the some more than others.
But I think it's also okay to say, like, you're gonna have like what you guys are doing now. You're not every episode. Are you saying
we're gonna have a dud?
I'm just saying. No, I'm saying like you're gonna release one that's like, man, did that even feel as good as like the ones we did the week prior? Yeah. And that's gotta be okay. Like it's gotta be okay to say like, all right, so that wasn't the best, but hey, feedback is a gift. Our listeners will let us know like. Hey, when y'all talked about this or whenever you were like blowing that shit out of your ass, wasn't my favorite version of you.
Not a good look.
No, but like something that my old boss used to say all the time, he's like, feedback is a gift, negative or positive. You want to learn from the perspectives of those you're trying to kind of impress or get the attention of, whatever it might be.
Well, I would point out that good criticism type feedback is great because like on YouTube and stuff, they blow up and they go, let's read some of the comments, and sometimes it'll be like stinky poo poo and like
don't get me wrong, the internet is just a mean place to live, but you're gonna still get somebody that's like, oh, kill yourself, and you're like, that's really dramatic. Like, right. Would you talk to your mother that way? Don't talk to me like that.
They probably would, and that's why they're saying that on YouTube.
Nice.
They're like, I am the mother. Oh. Yikes.
Oh no, are you out there spreading that? That's not good. That's probably somebody that I would say like, you have a stinky attitude.
Well, my response would just be, who hurt you? Like, are you okay, buddy? Like,
let's talk about it.
It's wild too because it also brings back the positive feedback where people will just lather it on there, you know what I mean? It's like, you guys are the best, da, da, da. So what's really weird is whatever role, so let's say you're watching a video and you're like, hey, I want to give criticism. Well, you'll go, or like just say a comment, and you'll go and look at other comments and you'll see like the negative side. And so if you're a fan of whatever you're watching and there's like the negative, then you're like, oh yeah, well, I'm gonna be negative, right?
Yeah. It's almost like who can out-sass who.
Rock bottom is pretty deep.
It is. Yeah, and then
they're like, you're at rock bottom right now.
And then when you face plant on the pavement of failure, it's hard to get up sometimes.
This is starting to turn into an album. It's somebody tripping and it just says failure on the pavement.
Did I not tell you that I was dropping my lit teacher fire album.
It's all gonna be G-rated. Like,
I actually do have a
raps.
children's like dance playlist because they love to wobble. And
didn't you have to have a no grinding talk?
Okay, listen, they are young, but yes, I did have to say no grinding, no hupping the door, no dropping it like it's hot, and please, for the love of God, close your legs.
Yeah.
And for my boys that are still sagging out there, it is not 2004. Knock it off. Stop it.
Wait, we're not supposed to do that.
Don't do
Okay.
it. I don't like
He
it.
stands up and he has
Like you come at me, you're trying to give me a hug, and your ass is all like, I can see the seam of your ass. Put it away. Pull up your pants. Just pull up your pants.
That is one thing that's interesting, right? Is the
some things never die. Yeah, that's super interesting.
some things never die, and that's a failure in itself, right?
Some things should die.
Like sagging.
What about your scene phase? Should I bring that up?
That was a beautiful face. I looked cute.
Oh, there! Look at that confidence.
Mm-hmm.
She's over.
I had electric blue hair.
She had
way too much eyeliner
all the way around. Gotta connect the dots.
It was.
It was.
And I looked amazing.
Here's something. Okay, so learning from failure as we grow. So like things I did maybe in middle school, I was like, that was a poor fashion choice, or like I was just like
I wore Crocs and basketball shorts, so like don't come at me.
So my thing isn't, because we had this weird expectation based on what we thought other people's expectations were, but as we become adults and we grow as people, hopefully you start to go, okay, well, what do I want? Right. Mm-hmm. And I do think it's good that, back whenever that phase was, you're like, yeah, that's what I was doing. That was my phase. Right. I mean, because I have my phases, where, I don't know, not knowing what I was doing was probably a pretty good phase. Right. And so it's just, that was a look. I have no idea what I'm doing. Right.
I think everybody still goes through that phase, bouts of it anyways. There's going to be a moment where you feel really excelled in the field that you're in, and then you're still like, doing?
Imposter syndrome all the time.
Oh yeah, is that what it's called?
Yeah, that's where you're like, I shouldn't be here, because as you continue to successfully do your job.
There are constant moments throughout my day where I've got 12 children in front of me, and I'm like, what do I do with you idiots?
Well, does it ever cross your mind? You're like, they trust me with all these kids
all the time. I'm like, their parents just dropped you off. They've never even seen my face, and they just leave you with me for hours. Like, what happens if one of you chokes? I'm just kidding. I know what to do, but still. But I've never had to do it.
Right. And it's super strange to take a look where you're at when you are in it, and then take a look at where you were when you're not in it anymore. And I think sometimes I have, I guess, the imposter thing with hindsight, where I look back and go, oh man, like, how did I end up there? And I was doing it for so long, right?
Yeah. I think that might just be life general. Like, how did I end up here? Like,
well, yeah, you wake up one day and you're like, wow, what the fuck?
It's almost like when you're driving and you're like on autopilot and you're like, when did I get in my car?
Yeah.
And now I'm at work.
Did I shower? Right.
Yeah.
100%. I wonder sometimes if, what we know now and we try to tell people about failure, right? So like, I think we made a joke of, what if the audience was young people, right? Obviously this is a podcast for adults, but if the audience was young people and trying to convey, hey, the way you view the world now makes sense to you, but one day you're going to go, wait a second, I'm not a kid anymore. And they basically go, this is what's actually going on.
Yeah.
And you're going to go, oh my God, I should have started on, because I believe kids should be kids. They should be going and playing outside and having fun and party, sleepovers, whatever it is that, water parks, woo. But, if you can start putting things, something for them to think about,
teaching
right?
them early about things that are that hit like our generation in the face.
And like that's the thing. Like sometimes we have to have the conversation of like, hey, are you having a kid moment, or are you trying to turn a kid moment into an adult problem? Because you're a child. It's okay. Like like they just start like out of nowhere, you'll just see them like hormones take over, and it all seems like it's almost like a volcano erupting. Like I didn't even see the smoke going off, and now there's lava everywhere, sort of deal. And you have to like ask them like, hey, like here's something that I'm going to show you. Do you think you'll be over this in the next 5 minutes? You're like, I think so. And you're like, okay, see, let it go then. It's going to be okay. We're going to move on. Today's going to be great. Like, don't turn this into a grudge. Like, I'm sure Gavin over there didn't mean to throw a ball in your face. Okay. Like, y'all were playing a rough game. It happens. I understand you're upset. You're embarrassed. Like, because it was a plush ball. It didn't hurt. But
who taught you that?
Yeah, it's a black eye.
What?
Who taught you that 5-minute rule?
Oh yeah, you did.
Yeah.
I teach it to children now.
Yeah, I taught it to you when you were my child before you had flown the nest.
I still have a hard time. Like, and sometimes you have to practice what you preach. I'm not gonna lie. There are multiple times where I'm like giving a kid like a scoop of my medicine, and then I refuse to take it myself.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah.
I took it from something, but it was the same concept. But in 5 years, is this going to matter?
Yeah.
And wow, the amount of things that aren't going to matter in 5 years.
There's very little that does. Yeah.
I think it's said two ways, or maybe I think of it in both ways. But think about something that was really crazy 5 years ago that really upset you. You know, well, I can't really think of anything unless it's like a traumatic event,
like a life-changing
event. Somebody attacked me, someone passed away, like, you know what I mean? I got really sick. If it's something where, you know, you stubbed your toe and like it just really messed up your day, at some point during that day, if you would have just been like, is this really gonna matter?
Well, even if you like mess something up at work, do you remember that now? I don't.
I describe it like, you know, like the perfect storm kind of day where everything that could go wrong definitely did go wrong. And that's called like Pavlov's law or something like that. Who's Pavlo?
No, that's the dog with the bell thing.
Okay, well, he was right.
Yeah.
But like anything that could go wrong definitely does go wrong. And like by the end of the day, when you're laying in your bed and you're all snuggled up, and you're like, well, that fucking sucked. And then you have to ask yourself, like, it's that moment, like when the shitty day is over, that's when you have to ask yourself, am I going to care about this in even 3 weeks? And you have to be like, no. And then you go to sleep.
Yeah.
That's really hard to do sometimes.
It's hard to take yourself out of it.
Sometimes. Yeah, it is. I mean, like, you're human. At the end of the day, you're human. And like, it's totally okay to like bitch and moan and cry about your failures and like just let it like go through the feels. And sometimes I even tell the kids like that, I'm like, hey, do you need to go through the feels right now? And so more often they'll actually say no, and they'll just be like, no, I got this. I'm like, okay, because like it looks like you might need to go through the feelings, like because it looks like other feelings are accumulating right now.
Something's leaking out.
Like it just doesn't look like you're ready to get over this.
Eye twitch.
I'm like, I need you to get either angry or upset, because I don't believe you'll be able to feel joy and happiness unless you kind of push out that other negative emotion that you're feeling.
You can't keep it pent up.
Yeah. And that's when we go to the gym.
I went to the gym once. It was pretty cool. Nice.
Yeah.
It's kind of
all he talks about is the gym. This is
gym is life.
It's
I mean, it's not life.
It's not.
Just it's a very intense hobby. Okay.
I'm so sorry that I keep coughing.
I'm gonna just choke you out as the end of the.
No, it's legitimately Jake's fault. He came home for 3 days, and in those 3 days, he got me sick and left me sick, and I am still trying to get over it. And I am so sorry.
I'm gonna get sick.
No, it's not. I think I don't know what it is.
The next podcast, I'm sick, and I'm like, I don't know how that worked, but
it just transferred through the mic.
I remember our guest Amy. Well, she fucking sucks.
We are never inviting her back.
Wow.
She has to have a doctor's visit before she comes in this house.
Do you have your note?
Dude, getting sick does suck.
I think the other thing we were talking about, like looking back as you're a child, and we had kind of brought up when you're a kid looking at people around you, right?
Yeah.
And viewing them as like, you know, completely successful, or that hero kind of look, like your parents or older figures, teachers, just thinking they're perfect in every way. And then as you grow up, you kind of learn, oh, they're not, because they're human.
Right.
Yeah. I have a couple of people from my childhood that when I remember them, there were no pieces that got put together or whatever that made me go, oh, wait a minute, you know? But a lot of them, for some reason, it just dawns on you and you go, wait a second, and you put the pieces together and you're like,
that makes sense. Yeah.
They were human. And because I mean, quite frankly, you know, I guess because like you're teaching kids, I keep thinking about my teachers now. You know, I think about the ones that were very well, they did very well as a teacher and had it just this is how it's going to be, very rigid. They found their way of doing it. It was a successful strategy and worked. I mean, I had an English teacher, Miss Wright, in 7th grade. You had to come in and there was like a list of words on the board, like 10 of them. And you had to write it down, look up every single word. And I mean, it increased my vocabulary.
It worked.
How many of those words do you remember now?
I don't.
Word.
Say something smart.
I was like,
Miss Wright would be so disappointed.
Yeah, spoon. I don't. So
an intellect would have said spork. I'm just letting you know.
Really,
that's true, right? Because it's the more evolved version.
Yes, it is.
But what's crazy is I knew nothing else about her other than her as my teacher.
Yeah.
And where
there's a whole thing of like teachers sleep under their desks and they don't have a real life, right?
Well,
they live at
some
the school.
teachers, yeah, some teachers, they'll start telling you, yeah, and then my neighbor, okay, let me tell you what my neighbor did, and you're like,
oh, I love those teachers.
Do
those
you?
are the fun ones. Yeah, those are the ones I liked because you could kill time, and you're like, tell me more. How's your husband doing? Like, let's get into that.
I think it kind of goes into that like meeting your heroes complex.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Where like if you meet your heroes, you're gonna find out they're human and like they're not just like this is gonna sound terrible, like they're just not that great. Like
they have flaws. Yeah.
It's the same thing with your teachers, your older peers, your father figures, your parents. Like when you start to see them in a different light because you're getting older, you're getting to that point in life that like when you idolize them and you start reaching that point that they were at when you had idolized them and you kind of start figuring out, I was like, holy shit, they didn't know what they were doing. They had no idea. Why would they think that was okay to like teach me these like core values? Things are different now. And you start slowly figuring out like my parents aren't perfect. Like they were just people in their 20s trying to, you know, get their shit together.
Keep a child alive.
That's the weird part is going, oh my God, my parents were in their 20s at some point or 30s or whatever, you know? I do have a tendency when I interact with way older people. So if I get the opportunity to meet anybody in their like 70s, like deep in the 70s and 80s, I ask them all sorts of questions. And what's weird is you can tell they're looking at me going, this guy thinks I have it all figured out because I'm 80 years old.
Yeah.
And I've even had someone say to me, you know, man, I wasn't supposed to make it this far. I don't, you know, like I didn't like, yeah, I didn't figure it out. It just, here we are, right? This is just, you know, the part of the road where it looks like I figured all these things out, but it's, you know, if you're trying for 80 years, something is going to come from it, right? If you're trying for 10 years, trying for 15 years, something has to happen. And I think maybe why we have this notion that we need to talk about failure in a way of, hey, this is what happened to me and it seemed really bad, but it's good. And here's why, is important because, you know, it's the only way you're allowed to persevere is if you're comfortable with the fact and reality that you are going to fail,
definitely
right?
Will fail. Yeah.
Like I think it's great that the mission that you guys are trying to like
The mission makes it sound cool.
Well, the mission that you guys are trying to like execute here is like, it's not something to fear. You're not meant to fear failure. You're meant to learn from it so that you can fail less, I guess. But like ultimately you're what y'all are trying to achieve is just having that conversation about it's okay to fuck up, because you're gonna fuck up there. It's unavoidable. You just get to screw up. Like it's gonna happen. Even if you are like take this is a terrible example, but you take the Challenger, for example, like rocket scientists. I'm so sorry, but like they were rocket scientists. You think these are like the smartest people on the planet has to offer, and that shit still blew up. Like, and granted, that was a catastrophe. Like that was like the ultimate fail. But when's the last time another rocket blew up with people on it?
You better knock on some wood.
Well, I know, but that's what I'm saying is like,
you got Bezos and
but the same thing goes with like medical. The same thing
Musk.
goes with like medical procedures, or you take diabetes even for as an example. A lot of people had to die first before they figured out man-made insulin that started saving lives, and that meant a lot of trial and error. A lot of
inventions, like any kind of modern creation came through a lot of bad creation.
And I mean, and don't get me wrong, that's why you do have to sign like death waivers and things like that, regardless, like not with everything, but like whatever you're getting involved with there, when the stakes are high, you're saying like, hey, if shit goes wrong, I understand it.
I'm okay with dying.
No, you're saying like, I'm okay that it might benefit with the development of this at some point succeeding.
You're talking about like trial stuff.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, that like being a part of the failing process. I'm sorry. I know that means that some people might die. This is bad. I'm trying.
No, you're fine.
I presented it is that like I just imagine you signing a waiver at some dude's house, and he's like, "You might die." And you're like, "Okay."
But I mean, like the same thing with medical procedures. Like if you go into surgery, they literally say like, "Hey, we accidentally kill you. Like just know that it was like it was an oopsie daisy. Like you were supposed to live. So please be okay with us learning from our mistakes, so that if we have somebody else go under the knife, it doesn't happen to them."
I can't stop picturing you at a dental office. They're doing a whitening and a cleaning, and they're like, "We need you to sign this just in case we have an oopsie daisy." Like I'm getting a cleaning. I don't know.
They're like, but it happens. I'm like, I guess it dies.
And she just being, I'm okay with dying here. Like, oh, it's fine.
Wakes up with one less kidney, no big deal.
Yeah, it's like, okay, well, what's my copay?
It's covered by insurance. No, death is very expensive.
No, it's not.
So something I just thought about. I've had a wonderful time talking with you today, y'all. Right, I'll just y'all.
Now we just labeled ourselves. We're very
do
southern.
You have? I'll just have to change my accent for like different regions of the. Okay,
start wearing a cowboy hat. Yeah.
Oh man, boots for hands. Do you have any like thing you would like to say or share or final thoughts? Or I mean, it could be a shameless plug of like you should,
go and get it.
I don't know, like
failure cheerleader. Hey, you might suck at it, but you got this even if you don't. Just kidding.
And that becomes our official ringtone, right?
That's your new intro. You might suck at it. It's okay if you don't. It's also okay if you do. Go you.
Wow.
Sorry.
That
was a bit of my Chili's voice there, wasn't it? Okay.
Chili's voice.
Welcome
to Chili's.
I don't know if I have much to leave the audience with, or whoever's listening with, other than what you guys are probably like beating into them every day that you're doing this podcast. And that's just like, hey, shit happens, it's just,
that's our whole platform.
Like it sucks, it happens, it's unavoidable, but it's
a beautiful process.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing. Like, oh gosh, I guess I never explained like the Lily concept, but long story short, a little girl that I babysat, she looked like she's about to start crying. I'm like, yay, you made a mistake. All right, go you. Until one day she took like a really nasty spill, and like it should have hurt. And we got to this point of training her so much to just be proud of falling and getting up and clapping her hands that she's got like a single tear, and she's like, and like you're like, no, that was supposed to hurt. And I guess like that's
now she's addicted to pain.
Yeah.
No,
she's
but
a pro skateboarder.
I guess like in that, what I'm trying to say is like, be Lily, like be proud of your failures. It's gonna hurt. You're gonna want to cry, but like just say like, yeah, I learned not to walk that way. Okay, and go about your day. Like just be Lily, I guess. I don't know.
It's gonna change someone's life. Someone's gonna like literally trip and fall. And
someone's gonna report me for letting a child hurt themselves.
Wow.
The real story is she pushed her.
I knew she was gonna shove a fork in the electric socket, but I let her do it anyway.
Yay! But no, I'm so blessed to have been asked to be here, and grateful that for you guys to have me. And like I said earlier, this has been a very positive experience, and I'm honored that I get to be a part of like even a fraction of the process.
You'll be back
at
some point, right?
We'll make yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Well,
it was fun. It was good.
Did you like it?
I enjoyed it. I will do some closing notes. Maybe Amy can like sing us out. We'll see what happens. But I just, on top of like your thank yous, we want to thank you for coming. She actually drove 6 hours to come hang out with me. And I'm going to say the reason was this podcast, but it probably wasn't. And we're just, very grateful to have you on first, just to start the line of guests and our friends that are coming on. The next episode, we get to talk to Sam's best friend. So it's just very fitting. It's interesting for us to get to share those relationships. And then I want to thank the listeners, viewers, however you're seeing this. We are available on Spotify, Apple, all the podcast stuff, and then YouTube, where you can see our faces.
Facebook 2008,
Yeah, Facebook, Twitter, all that.
Is MySpace still a thing?
We're on MySpace.
Wow.
AOL.
The old platform, not the new platform, whatever that's about.
Is there a new MySpace? Oh my God, I don't want to know.
At some point in time, I don't know anymore, but I remember something happened in like 2010, 2011, where the MySpace that we talk about didn't exist anymore. And it's like
it's probably for the best.
It's like it was like bought out and they were like, all right, scrap the whole thing. I love how on our outro, I'm going on a MySpace tangent. And I'd like to promote Zynga while we're at it, right? Wow.
The public needs to know. We're also on TikTok, like we mentioned earlier. Sam is getting in there. I'm trying to get him to do a Kronk impression from Emperor's New Groove.
Oh, Sam, that'd be amazing.
So yeah, I'm gonna do it publicly here. So now he has to do it.
What is it? Cusco, right? It's for Cusco.
Poison for Cusco.
Yeah, I can do it. I've been practicing. It's not. No one's ever gonna be that guy.
I want the spinach puffs, like scene from you, if I could. You don't even like, even if you don't let other people see it. Can I?
So you got to text me. So I have to rewatch this movie because it's been so long.
Okay.
And that's how I'm going to channel this guy. So if you point it out, I'll find that scene and I'll.
Perfect. Okay. Great. Agreed.
Awesome. I have homework this weekend. Hey, I'm not going to make it to work because I got a Cusco.
Right? I have to watch Emperor's New Groove 12 times. I can't commit.
Deal.
And then the final thing, which I am really excited for. I know we're starting to get like friends sending it in, but it'll be cool to get, strangers too. But you can send us your failures. It can be a serious story with a good, lesson, or it can be something stupid. You just messed up and it's funny. You can send it to friendsoffailurepodcast@gmail.com, or you can call us at 916-304-3545. And if that's the wrong number, I'm sorry to whatever grandma is getting those voicemails.
She probably likes them. I would.
I don't know what I did right, but people love me. They just keep calling me.
They tell me like these weird stories.
Yeah. Wow. That would be. We would find out eventually, right? Because we'd be like, no one's calling. Dope. So we'd like to leave you on this note. Life is happening for you, not to you. So go out there and fail.
Wait, start singing now?
Yeah, start singing now.
Oh, you're gonna fail. You're gonna do it. It's okay. Pat yourself on the back. Dust it off. Wash your face. You got it.
Wash your face.
If it's not I'm stronger than you, it's I'm wiser than you, I'm more loving than you, I'm more tolerant than you, I'm more sophisticated than you. It doesn't matter what it is, but this constant competition is going on. This is the secret. This is the secret. You can't make a mistake.